Hello, everyone. Welcome to our fourth QAfeteria. I see some people joining. That's nice. Okay, let's start. So my name is Eugene. I'll be your host and moderator today. I'm a senior software test automation engineer here at EPAM, and I'd like to let you know, as you can see, this session will be recorded. So from the description, you can see that we're going to talk about quality gates, and we'll have Boris Grgincic as our main speaker, but more on that later. I'd like to give a few words about EPAM itself, the organization which is hosting this event. So EPAM is a leading global provider of digital platform engineering and development services. We've got more than 60,000 people on board, all varieties, specialties in the information technology sector, and we're operating in more than 50 countries. And for further information, you can check our official webpage at epam.com, and you can also check our career section if you're interested in joining perhaps EPAM. So without further ado, let me present our main and sole guest speaker, who is, as said earlier, Boris Grgincic. He is a lead test automation engineer here, and he will be talking about quality gates. And the concrete title of his topic is what they are and how to use them. Before I proceed with Boris, I would just like to let you know that we have our chat window section on the right side in our official YouTube channel. I can see already some participants are writing some comments. So please feel free to use them. Feel free to use it, and all of your questions will be answered after Boris ends his presentation. So Boris, whenever you're ready, please start sharing your screen. And to all of the other participants, I hope that you will enjoy this demo by Boris. Boris?
Okay, thank you very much, Eugene. So today, let's talk about quality gates and maybe a little bit about me. So I have over 12 years of experience in software testing industry, in QA team lead roles for more than 5 years, had experience with executing a lot of test strategies, developing test automation frameworks from scratch. I'm very passionate about continuous improvement, the new technologies, some innovative solutions, and I have a broad experience with setting up quality gates and testing across a lot of different domains, like from the web, even desktop UI automation, all the way through mobile testing. So today we're going to discuss this topic in 3 sections. First, we're going to do a little introduction into quality gates. Then we're going to have a more detailed look into some of the quality gates types. And finally, we're going to discuss how to actually succeed with quality gates. So let's start with this introduction. So what are quality gates, in fact? So they are an integrated part of the SDLC consisting of measurable and achievable criteria of success, which help the team deliver features with confidence. So this is just one of the possible definitions, but basically it does strikes at the core of what they actually are. Some may consider them maybe some a decision points. For some, they are a kind of a quality control, or even they can be some type of evidence for your work, or even some sort of checklists. And when speaking about them, or what people are generally using in terms of the names for this, you may also find in some literature or some articles, some blogs, some YouTube channels that people are referring them to release gates, deployment gates, quality checkpoints, quality control points, or more often some types of feedback loops. And not all these definitions are always completely the same, but generally they do kind of aim at this general idea. And again, when we approach this topic of quality gates, so we got to move ourselves from that old-fashioned views. Okay, so this is like old waterfall approach. There is testing in the end. This is the final gate. No, when speaking about modern quality gates, we are using a little bit different approach, but more to that a bit later. So why do we need them? So what are some of the common project challenges that you may have, and which quality gates may help you with? So first challenge, let's imagine you have a situation where your technical debt is rising. So I guess this is something that often happens like to most of teams, or it at least did happen at some point. And what this essentially does is, as the technical debt grows, it makes it more and more hard for you to actually deliver some value to your customers. However, with the potential introduction of quality gates, we are building quality in. And building quality in, you may have heard of it a lot of times or read it somewhere, and like, what does it mean? Like, it doesn't mean anything, right? But essentially, in this context, actually, it has some meaning, because as you are putting the quality gates throughout your development process, you are actually like forcing quality at some certain points. So you're actually integrating it into your development process, rather than just thinking about it later, like when some problems arise or after it's just too late. And this essentially, this whole process will help you with achieving some quality standards, which will enable you to actually deliver some proper value for your customers. Another common challenge is the problem of finding the bugs too late. As like most people probably know, finding the bugs at some later phases, like testing or even in some production environments, may be very, very expensive to fix. However, with the introduction of some quality gates, we might get some fast feedback of our work. And essentially, if you put the quality gates in all of these phases, like if you shift it to the left, it will help you identify like all the or most of the problems earlier, and you can address them promptly. And well, as fast as you address them, it will be like less expensive for you to do it. And with it, of course, you get faster cycle time, because if you're able to catch and resolve the issues earlier, when it's more easier to actually fix them, you will be able to deliver things to production much faster, because you're going to be spending less time on all of these different phases. You will not need to include all of these different people, and it will be definitely more suitable situation for you. Going further, another common project challenge is testing becoming a bottleneck. Let's imagine a scenario. So developers are really productive. They are like developing all these features, and all of them are coming to some testers. And like in the old traditional ways of working, the testers were known as gatekeepers of quality. And while this is great for like quality perspective, it's a terrible thing for let's say delivering something of actual value to production, because testing oftentimes became a bottleneck. Simply for those, let's say, manual testers, it's impossible to cover all these cases, especially as the project goes on. It becomes more and more difficult to actually keep up the pace. However, with the introduction of quality gates, you address this challenge by having confidence when making changes. So instead of having the total amount of burden on, let's say, some manual testers back, you have all these quality gates which are giving you feedback about the quality of your work. And if the new defects are introduced, they may be caught by all these defenses that you have put into your development process. And also, it will enable you actually to make some informed decision making, because you will have a better idea, like what is the thing that you're actually shipping, how good it is, and without actually spending weeks or even months of work on it. But how to approach it? So how do you start with all these quality gates? Essentially, first you need to do a discovery phase. You got to find information on your project, on your product, on your infrastructure, on the environments that you may have. You got to take into account possible limitations that you might have on your project. Maybe there's also some specifics about your test data. And especially, you got to understand your architecture. You got to look like what's beneath the surface. It's not enough like to have some kind of high-level view into it. We need to dig in. And also, another important thing is to actually identify the dependencies and all the components and key parts in your applications. And all of this might help you with the second step, which is like considering the overall test strategy on the project. So you got to decide on scope of testing. You got to decide on the testing types. Of course, there's always some time constraints, so you cannot do it all. And you got to choose. And how do you choose it? Well, based on the discovery phase that you did. Going further, you got to select the quality gates based on the needs that you have identified. So this is the place where you got to like choose. Okay, so we need this, we need unit tests, we need code review, we need something. Then proceeding further, you got to define the pass and fail criteria. You got to set your target. So you got to start somewhere, because maybe like at first glance you will like not see what the like optimal target is, but that's okay. Maybe sometimes later you will get more insight, you will get more feedback, and you will like change those target and like more like adapt them more to your needs. And another important aspect is to actually create a plan what to do when the quality gate fails, because like if you don't do this, like and quality gate fails, like what, you just skip it, okay? And if you like apply this approach to all of your quality gates, then what's the point, right? And proceeding further, like a final step is to actually implement the design quality gates. And how do we like even like put it in practice? How do we approach all of this? Well, basically, when you approach this problem, you usually want to create some kind of mix of hard and soft blocks because you want to have some flexibility. And here, like you got to consider the types of the quality gates. You got to consider what quality gates you will have as automatic, what quality gates will you have as manual, because, well, not all or not everything can be automated at all times. It really depends on your team structure, on the project, on the problem itself. And the second thing is, of course, automate the steps inside the CI/CD pipeline. I guess most teams today are using these pipelines, but maybe some of them are only using it maybe for code integration. Maybe they like took a step further and automated their deployments, but they're not. If they stop there, they are actually not leveraging the full capabilities of these platforms. And there are various of them, various platforms like Jenkins, GitLab, GitHub, Semaphore, etc. They all have really, really good support, and they're the place where you want to integrate your quality gates, automated quality gates in. And finally, what you want to implement into your process is like this simple rule to actually fix the broken builds immediately. So one of the quality gates fails, you got to fix it. Of course, it will, like this is negotiable. This will depend on the quality gate type or just like specific context. But in general, the ideal situation is that you address these issues, that you actually fix those issues immediately. And now let's try to take a look into some of the quality gate types. So what are they, and how to set them up, how to use them efficiently, like how to set them up as quality gates. Well, first thing, let's look at one example quality gate setup in delivery pipeline. And well, the first thing, I guess, is immediate warning, like don't like take a screenshot of this screen and apply it blindly into all your projects, because it simply doesn't work. So we have this set up for one specific context, and it might work somewhere, but usually you will have to fine tune it. Usually you will have to fit it into your context, change some things up, and just like optimize it for your application and for your delivery cycle. In general, what this like visualization shows is different environments, and like at all the way to the left, we may see like the first environment is of course local development, and this is where everything starts. But this is already a place where you can apply some of the quality gates. Of course, you have some activities like marked in yellow. So there's coding, there's unit test creation, there's integration test creation, and there's this criteria, the quality gates, which may already be implemented. Like some plugins where you're doing some static code analysis, you're also running the unit tests locally, you're running the integration tests locally. Once this has passed, we are ready to try to push things to the developer branch. And there, on this developer branch, we may have like the same checks, but with one addition. And this addition is usually a code review, where someone visually inspects the code. Then if all of these things are passing, we may proceed to the following phase, which is the deployment to the dev environment. And here, usually we'll like put up some kind of smoke testing, which is let's say a small set of tests, which will like give us a fast feedback if this like whole version is even ready to be like tested further. And then we, in this situation, decided to put in some manual developer validation, which is a requirement for pushing everything to the integration environment. And here, again, after smoke testing after smoke tests are passing, we want to do some additional checks. So this is where things became a bit more serious, where we are doing some, let's say, feature testing, capability testing, and some more advanced types of tests. On this environment, their code is integrated with everyone else, and maybe in some applications or in some delivery pipelines, already some third-party integrations are also present. Then looking forward, we have the QA environment, where more or deeper tests are being run, like exploratory testing. So here, someone takes the application, runs it through some exploratory testing sessions, and tries to learn things about this application and get as much information as possible before we push everything to pre-prod. Maybe in some contexts, people are calling this staging or UAT environment. And here, on this occasion, another manual quality gate has been set up, which is user acceptance tests, where some users of the applications have actually like sit down and try to use the application and confirm it. And also on this situation, in this context, performance testing quality gate has also been introduced. Presumably, maybe on this environment, the test data is most appropriate for this type of testing, or even the test infrastructure is most appropriate. And then we have also manual security testing, which has been deemed as necessary, probably because of some mandatory legal reasons, etc. And then finally, if all these quality gates are passing, we're pushing things to production. where we have a combination of smoke tests and ad hoc testing. If, well, these quality gates, if they are like passing, like everything is okay, but if they are not passing, there's probably going to be some kind of rollback. So here we're not like pushing things any further. Okay, but let's now look at some of these quality gates in more detail. So looking at the development, here are some of the quality gates or some of the usual quality gates that may appear. So there may be some static code analysis. You might want to introduce some code standards and conventions, which is essentially, again, static code analysis, but we may like visualize it here separately. Then we have unit tests. Then we have code reviews, pair or even mob programming, which is like a popular thing in recent years. And finally, mutation testing, maybe as an extension to the unit tests. Well, all of these might help you. Again, not all of them you may want to implement in your project, but let's look at some like practical examples, how it may look like. Looking at the unit tests, usually on our projects, we are like going to, if we are going to have some unit tests, we're going to try to set them at 60 or to 90% code coverage or branch coverage. And well, if the unit tests are failing, you want to stop the pipeline. Usually it's not a good sign because unit tests are considered like the least flaky in our test pyramid. So usually it means trouble. And it really is recommended that you stop and look at the problems. And here tooling is important. You want to like look at the problems like quickly, spend as well like the least amount of time as you can, and get to the bottom of all these problems. Here, I guess the tooling, every language has some kind of unit test framework. So Java, TestNGJ, Unify, we have Python, PyTest, Jasmine, MSTest, and Unit. So like each language has this, and well, it's definitely a recommended practice, and the benefits are widely known. Looking further, let's look at the static code analysis. So SonarQube is an example tool which may be implemented into the pipeline. You may have it as a plugin on your IDE, and it's definitely good to actually, if you're like doing like implementing some new classes, it's good to actually run it locally. But having a centralized placed in a CI/CD as the final checkup is definitely recommended. SonarQube could be actually a rather easy win for a team to improve their quality, because it will actually provide you a lot of information on the bugs, on the vulnerabilities, on the technical depth. And especially in this case, it has been set up as a code coverage quality gate. And this quality gate has actually failed because the coverage on the 84 new lines which have been covered, which have been added in this commit, has been only 15%. And SonarQube has alerted us that this is a problem, because on the project we agreed that the 80% code coverage is necessary. Essentially, SonarQube offers like a lot more, but it doesn't have to be SonarQube. Of course, there are other static code analysis tools, and like introducing any of them into your pipeline might be a big win for you. Looking forward, we also have check style. Check style, while it also can be introduced on the, well, like on your IDE level, and be run like on demand, it's also recommended to actually implement it into a CI/CD pipeline. And it may be also like a quick and easy win for you, because like this actually enables you to have like even and standardized way how you are like producing code. And it's often a problem when people need to collaborate. If the code styles are just too different, it may be really, really difficult to collaborate, even like do the code reviews later, etc. And like talking about the code reviews, like can it be automated? Well, essentially SonarQube and CheckStyle is a way of like automating the code review. So yeah, definitely, like we want to in general automate stuff, and this might be a nice way to go. Again, like CheckStyle is only one option. There are different types of static code analysis tools for code conventions and standards within every language. Looking further, so we have code reviews. So there may be like different categorizations of these code reviews. Here on this screen, you may see we have instant code review, walkthrough, peer review, formal review. Instant, it's more like some over-the-shoulder, like or even pair programming approach. Walkthrough, where like someone really like dives deep with you on some code. Peer review is probably most common because it's something like rather popular in recent years, especially with all these tools available. And the tooling here is very, very important. Of course, you can do it like without any tool, but it's really, really convenient, like to have it in GitLab, GitHub, or any other of the tools. Like you just get to any of the lines, you just add your comment there, like have a brief discussion and finish with it and proceed further. And yeah, discussion. It is important, like the culture is important, of course, with code reviews. If the culture is really like problematic, code reviews just, they may like spit some oil to the fire. Like, so here in this occasion, you just need to communicate, you need to talk with your team and agree on some things, agree on at least on the basic standards, and definitely be polite. Don't argue, because it may like turn this quality gate into quality hell, right? Okay, so proceeding further, we have integration testing, and here on this level there are different types of quality gates that you may set. Let's say you have some interfaces, you can say at least interface must have at least one integration test. And here we're talking about some maybe method calls, some shared data structures, etc. On the other hand, if we're talking about some system boundaries and integration tests on that level, also definitely you want to have at least one integration test. Like to be sure that your integrations, let's say towards the DB, to the API or hardware actually works. And finally, what you may say is rather a simple thing. So all the integration tests passing are a prerequisite for promoting from dev to QA environment. And this can be supplemented with some rules, like all the configs and databases must be updated. And I guess many people have probably run into this situation. Maybe some code has been pushed, some code has been deployed, and not all integrations have been working. Not all configs have been set up. And what this essentially does, it just adds some waste into your process. So this is what you want to avoid with setting up some of those integration testing quality gates. Looking forward, again, we have some functional testing quality gates. And as like visualized on that pipeline before, smoke testing can play a big role in like speeding things up. There you might have a big like regression test, and having smoke tests might give you really, really fast feedback if everything is okay. Especially if you have some, let's say, other problems in your process, this approach might help you like greatly with speeding things up. And speaking about smoke testing and regression testing, of course, like you want to automate it, but I guess in some contexts, maybe it's hard, it's not possible, you're not there yet. So yeah, maybe manual approach is indeed the only option. But what definitely is manual and will stay like that is exploratory testing. This is definitely something that is recommended to be included as a quality gate in practically every context, because exploratory testing has shown its value a lot of times. So you want to have those exploratory testing sessions, not like not to find as much bugs as possible, but to actually learn about your application, to learn maybe about the things you need to automate, to learn where are the potential problems, where are the potential gaps. So this is definitely something that you want to consider as a hard quality gate whenever you're able. And of course, there may be some ad hoc testing. This is something that we did in one of the previous projects. We simply introduced it because we've seen some value. And this ad hoc testing is interesting because it doesn't necessarily also need to be only focused on, or the only gain that you're gaining for it doesn't necessarily only need to be finding some bugs, but also it does enable you to share some knowledge between the team members. So it can be a nice addition. And of course, there could be some user experience testing, some end-to-end testing, etc. And speaking basically about all of these test types, it is definitely recommended to automate any suitable test types. Of course, not everything can be automated, but today we have an abundance of different tools which may help different needs. I guess everybody has heard of Selenium. There are like Playwright, Cypress, and on the API level, rest assured, Postman, like very like different variety of tools is available here. For mobile, I guess Appium might be considered the most popular, but of course there are like Espresso and other tools. There's tools for also different purposes, like some BDD approaches, which might be also an interesting approach. And of course, some other specific tools like applet tools, which does provide you with some visual testing, which also for some people might be a nice and interesting option. Of course, when speaking about all of this, you want to have, like, especially all these UI test automation tools, you want to have good reporting. And this cannot be emphasized enough. Bad reporting will certainly make like UI testing or even API testing, like it could make your quality gate a nightmare. Essentially, let's imagine a scenario where you have 500 Selenium tests and everything is great, everything is passing, but one night a third of your tests are failing. So you try to figure things out, and like you cannot get to any root cause what is happening. So you have two options. You got to ship things to production, and you may either block it and potentially be in a lot of trouble, or you may actually ship it and again be in a lot of trouble. So it's a like matter of like gains, like what at that point presents you with most gain. However, you really should avoid the situation and try to work on that reporting. EPAM has, for this reason, actually worked a lot on this accelerator, which is called Report Portal. The screenshot is visible on the right, and it aimed to address this challenge. So really enable the teams to quickly get to the bottom of all these problems. So there's even some AI included into this product, where it kind of helps you categorize where your problems lie. And if you have a lot of failures, this can be really, really essential. And this could be really crucial for you to succeed with this type of quality gate, because, as I said, at some point, people just might give up from your test automation. Okay, this is just not reliable. This is too flaky, and yeah, it's a lot of wasted effort. But thinking about any of these tests, you gotta think about keeping your tests balanced in a proper testing pyramid, and all of this should be integrated fully into your delivery pipeline. On this, there are many representation of testing pyramids. So this representation, this bottom part, might be very familiar to you, with unit tests consisting or amounting to the biggest amount of tests you want to have. Then we have some API level where there's some maybe integration tests, component tests in the middle, and finally at the top there are unit tests. All of this is supplemented with different approaches, like maybe BDD, ATDD, TDD, some tools, some coverage controls, or coverage targets, static code analysis, etc. In the CI/CD pipeline, you definitely also want to consider some of the non-functional testing types, like security, accessibility, performance. And at the top, as previously mentioned, you do not want to forget the exploratory and maybe even ad hoc UI testing. But talking about non-functional quality gates, definitely something which we need to talk about. Have you ever had a situation like this? Let's imagine, so you're running some application in the production, everything is okay. So we see the CPU is maybe at around 5%, and then we do a deployment, and suddenly the CPU jumps 4 times. Okay, so what's the problem? Why didn't we catch it earlier? So what to do? Do we roll back? Do we analyze? How to approach this problem? Well, essentially, definitely what is advisable and what has been proven in our experience in many, many different projects is to actually include performance testing into your pipeline. So there are different tools, different free tools like JMeter, there's Gatling, there's Grafana, and some great variety of other tools. But basically, they are not that difficult to at least to learn, or to some basic level, and to start somewhere. And then you want to choose the performance test types that fit your context. The breakpoint test, it's probably not something that you want to have in your pipeline. Well, also the spike test, maybe it's just too specific. Maybe it could be interesting for you if you have a really, really spiky situation on your production environment. But what your most common scenario is to implement some kind of load tests and implement them. Make it a part of your pipeline, minimize the number of tests because you want to get the feedback fast, and just don't skip it when you're making, especially don't skip it when you're making some significant changes. Maybe it doesn't have to be totally integrated, just really put some kind of hard stop, okay, people, we did a huge feature change, let's do a performance test. And in addition to that, there are different types, like endurance tests, breakpoint tests, endurance tests, or some stress tests, which may fit some context. Maybe you're running some long-running batches overnight, so maybe, and your release cycles are really slow. Maybe it does make sense to actually include this type of quality gates. And when thinking about it, choose all the common performance metrics, choose the feature context, like include response time, include throughput. This is an interesting situation. On one of our quality gates integrated into the pipeline, we had the really delicate response time quality gate set, but we didn't have the throughput, so somehow it was forgotten. And after a while, what happened? Our performance tests, some of our agents somehow died. They didn't spin up, and actually the response time which we got was, of course, it was okay because only one agent was attacking it. But if we had this throughput target, then we would have gotten the information that something is wrong. And of course, there are some other criteria like concurrent users, page load time, success rate, and don't forget about the hardware aspect. Think about the CPU, think about disk and network, think about RAM and memory. Maybe there's an API exposed, especially if you're doing something with some of the cloud providers. You can probably query it and check the alarms, check what's going on with the CPU and RAM. And then we proceed to the security testing. Generally, it is recommended to integrate the security testing into your pipeline. And of course, this may be a problem because of the knowledge, because of a lot of things, but there are some easy wins for the quality gates of this type. You may start simple. Maybe you can do some steady code analysis, but with some security tool which are available. You may do some basic security scanning. You may do some vulnerability scanning. There are tools for this which may be easily integrated. Of course, for some people, this may not be enough, and full penetration testing and ethical hacking must be included into every release cycle. So this might be a hard gate for some sensitive application. Looking forward, we came to the contract testing, and this is a type of testing that is in recent years more and more popular and is being used by more and more teams. Basically, yeah, it's true. Some people may say contract testing, especially in some scenarios, borderlines some functional testing, but it is actually non-functional testing in terms that it does check the interfaces between the providers and the consumers. It checks the data types, the values, and the formats. So it has a different focus, definitely. And here, I guess, PACT is one of the leaders in this area. It basically has the support for all the languages. And again, having those reports on failures, really important thing for you to make sense of all this information that is coming to you, because you have all these feedback loops, right? You have all these quality gates. You're going to get a lot of feedback. You want to make sense of it. You want to make sense of it fast. So this is why reporting is important. And finally, what I didn't want to miss is the accessibility testing, the topic which has been in discussions more and more in recent years. To some statistics, there are about 15% of people in the world who have some type of disability, and about 2 to 4% have difficult or significant difficulties in functioning. So if you're doing something with the governments of European Union or some other regulatory rules or legal bindings are forcing you to do it, you got to do it. But maybe you want to target also these users. You don't want to miss out on them, because they could also be a part of your potential revenue streams. And here there may be some manual approaches, like some screen readers, speech recognition software, special keyboards, etc. But there are also tools. These tools might be semi-automatic, manual, or could be even completely integrated into your pipeline, like X. You might take it, you might want to look at it, and it might give you a report of all the problems which are potentially not that hard to fix, but might really help the people with some accessibility requirements. So yeah, definitely something that is worth considering. But again, it depends on the budget, it depends on the client, and it depends on the overall context. Okay, so we looked at several types of quality gates. Like, to give you an idea, of course, there are many different types, like for probably whole day or whole week workshop. But I hope you get the idea of at least of the approach, what we need to think about when we're setting it up, what criteria, what targets could we set up with some of them, and how to actually use them. Okay, but how to succeed? First, well, before we can succeed, we need to know how we can fail. And there are many challenges when we are setting up quality gates, which might like cause us big problems. So there could be, like looking from the left, there could be some staffing shortages. And if you have staffing shortages, which might be like a case for a lot of people, what you might end up is some of the anti-patterns, like quality gates becoming your bottlenecks. Like you might have a team of manual testers, and they are your like really important quality gate. But of course, if you don't have enough of them, it's going to be a bottleneck. But also, you might have some automatic quality gates, but they might have some problems. So how to address the problems? You need to put some people on them. You need to, like, someone actually handling those problems. So definitely this could be a challenge for you. And of course, poor test challenge could, poor test coverage could also be the outcome of these staffing shortages. What if you have poor communication in your team? Basically, if people are not talking, you will lack continuous improvement in this team. You will lack continuous improvement in your delivery pipeline, because you can do some improvements on your own, but if you don't have like information from all the stakeholders, it simply will not be as effective as it should be. And you also might fail into the anti-pattern of ambiguous fail and pass criteria. Let's say someone put up some kind of quality gate and now it's failing your build, but you don't actually understand, like, what's the criteria? Why has it been set up like this? Why is it failing? So definitely it could be a challenge for you. Then you might have a problem with no access to tools, which will lead you to need to do too much manual intervention, like too much manual work in your delivery pipeline. You might have limited scalability with this problem, because, like, how can you scale your testing if you do not have proper tools? Like, you probably cannot add like more and more people. Like, you got to use the tools to help you to scale your process. Then another challenge might be that you don't have enough idea about your priorities. So what will end up, like, what will happen? You will choose the wrong gates. You will choose the wrong criteria for those gates, and simply get into a lot of problems. Then what if you have some organizational problems? Well, organizational problems will lead to inconsistent gate enforcement. So yeah, you got like simply some gates are failing, but nobody knows what to do about it. Like, you don't have it structured, so you just skip it, and yeah, what's the point? You might also not have a plan to address the foundations. Often when quality gates are failing, you need to have a lot of parties included. But if you have organizational problems, this will be very hard. And essentially, you'll end up with inefficient quality gates. But what if you have lack of knowledge? You might duplicate your tests. Like, you're going to do some tests on the top level, on the UI level, but also have 20 tests on unit level that will do the same things. And again, connected to this, you'll be testing on the wrong levels. Maybe you're going to be testing something at the end-to-end level or UI level when it should be done on some of the bottom ones. And again, not taking context into account. Not every approach is suitable to every like context. And again, you might have resistance to change, like from developers or from testers who don't like what you're doing, and you will have difficult introduction of new quality gates and over-reliance of manual checks. And finally, lack of funding, like who doesn't have this problem? Like you can never have enough funds, right? Which will end up with inadequate gates infrastructure or compromised gate quality if this problem is largely emphasized. But what to do about it? What can we do? Unfortunately, I cannot give you like a blueprint. Okay, these are the steps. You need to do this. No, you got to perform the audit to understand your current state. You got to look what are your problems, what is your like delivery pipeline about, who are the people, what are their problems, and then develop tailored recommendations based on these findings. And consider some general advices. Focus on data-driven decision-making, like metrics. Understand everyone's concerns. Provide clear information on the benefits and rationale. Encourage knowledge sharing and within the team, and perform employee training. So maybe it needs like take one day, maybe take more days and fill those gaps. And establish a framework for continuous improvement and learning. And finally, there are also some other general advices that you may take into account, like introduction of shift left and shift right testing. So in traditional model, we put like a huge like quality gate in the middle. These are gatekeepers of quality, the manual testers, but we want to move from that. We want to shift it left. We want to do some set up quality gates as soon as we can, so we can get fast feedback and fix the problems easily. But also there are things that you can do on the right. If you put some things on the right, like monitoring and proper alerting, maybe some feature toggles, it may be solution for your like all this testing on the left, because it may help you with easing up all these problems on the left. And try to use like some model to get to know information about your application. Let's say you don't know how to approach your application, like what are all the aspects you should consider. There are models like this architecture 4+1 view, which like describes the system from different viewpoints, and like this different stakeholders like end users, developers, system engineers, project managers, and you write all these things up and you try to draw some conclusions on it, and then see where are the problems and what can be done. And take key metrics into account. Like these are one like popular metrics, like from the Accelerate book, where like we want to control what is going on with our entire like development process, and metrics like lead time to change, deployment frequency, mean time to restore, change failure rate might be helpful. You set the targets, see how you compare to some elite performers, and see what will happen. There are some additional metrics, of course, which you may use, some quality metrics, and there's even an upgrade of these DORA Accelerate metrics, which is called SPACE, from the same authors, or at least I know Nicole Forsgren is participating there, which also might be something worth looking into. And when talking about test automation, when building your quality gates, when like thinking about them, try to use some principles like TRIMS, so to make your automation targeted, reliable, informative, maintainable, and speedy. Like these are the factors that will greatly influence how successful you will be with setting up all those quality gates. And at the end, like looking at some of the key takeaways, which I recommend, is just to include quality gates into your process. Start using and try, like if you're not using them, start thinking about them. Start like thinking, what can you add? How can you like help yourself with them? they're not easy to implement. Like there are challenges, definitely, as you can see. Like even if you implement them, there could be some challenges, but in the end, it's definitely worth it, and it's like definitely a way to go. And don't stop, continuously improve and learn on your mistakes. You cannot like set something up and forget about it. Just like focus and improve. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Boris. This was really insightful. I myself cannot believe that this is such a vast domain area of various things inside the quality gates. We do have a few questions by one participant. He's going under the nickname Crny. So I'll read out the first question. The question is, do you implement QA gates for PRs in a way that the CI tool will merge the PR in the leading branch, by that he means main or master branch, and check if the PR would break the build?
Okay, so basically, okay, let me just, maybe it's, okay, maybe it would be nice.
So
I think so. So basically, like it will depend on your team. Like maybe some modern like viewpoints are even that PRs are not a good strategy even to go. Like you should not be doing PRs. You should be doing some kind of the trunk-based development. You should be doing some pair programming. But it really depends on the maturity of your team. It depends where you are. It's really important to realize what can you do and what effect will it have. Basically, like what is common, I guess, is that you create a PR, and there are some, like everything is on a separate branch, and there are some code reviews there. You have all these other like checks, like static code analysis check, unit test, integration test. And let's say this code review is not going well, so maybe there were a lot of comments, but what is like done then, like after all these comments are implemented, after all these changes are approved, everything is run again. Like you have all these checks being run again on this separate branch, and maybe it even spins up some ad hoc environments. It depends, but basically it is like recommended that everything is being run before it is deployed on some proper environment. And yeah, if the merge is approved, if everything is passing, yeah, like this process might be like configured to go automatically.
thank you. So another question from, now we've got his name as well, Renato Čurić, I believe. When you've defined the constraints for static code analysis, is it a joint venture or something the developers do? So basically, static code analysis, I think we are talking about SonarQube, SNCC. So basically, who does it? Like developers, DevOps, QAs, or is it just a single entity?
Yeah, I guess it depends. Like on if you join like a project or a company where SonarQube has been pre-configured, like there are already a lot of rules in place. So your like job is maybe only to comply to those organizational level rules. If it's a smaller team, it should be a joint decision, because like setting the criteria here may end up like changing the entire delivery pipeline. Let's say we're not good at writing unit tests. So what does it actually mean? Like if we were not writing unit tests, or if we're writing unit tests with very low threshold, it might be the case that our efforts will have to be like improved on some other areas. So maybe we need to do more integration tests. And then the question is, who is doing these integration tests? On some teams, the developers might be doing them. On some teams, actually, they come under like QA supervision. So it really depends on this context, but it should definitely be a joint venture. On some projects, again, we have like some roles specific, like who are dealing with stuff like this, which are trying to define the entire test strategy for the project. For example, there are quality architects at EPAM who like join the project, whether it's a new one or it's maybe an existing one. They try to do an audit, they see what is there, and then they try to do like of course they talk with everyone, they talk with developers, they talk with testers, and they try to come up with some like best solution for everybody. So yeah, definitely there should be more people included into these discussions, because yeah, even though I guess developers will be most affected by this, still there's definitely something to collaborate on.
Okay, thanks. I think this is now goes the last one from Renato. So this is more of a personal one, I guess. Everyone has. Okay, I'll read it out. So, do you implement pre-commit, pre-push hooks as quality gates in your project? What's your experience?
Well, we haven't in let's say my previous one, we haven't, because we had the, well, let's say it was agreed on the team that the maturity of the team and the controls that we had were good enough. But yeah, like why not? Maybe for someone it could like work. So yeah, it's worth discussing and maybe implementing.
So I guess it should be a mutual decision inside the team, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch to another participant. He's going under the nickname Obrad GM. So, any recommendations to lower or remove delays introduced by quality gates into delivery of value?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is, again, it depends, like because, well, there are different types of quality gates. So in general, some quality gates may indeed like be some kind of big delay for you. For example, this security testing, it's simply in this example, as you can see, it's manual, and it's really hard like to speed this process up. Like you may add up some resources if you have the budget, but of course that may not be always available. But it is, of course, important to discuss it with the stakeholders. And I would say that a lot of these delays may, like from, let's say, from my experience, may come up either from maybe not having your testing pyramid balanced. So maybe you're just doing or relying too much on this manual intervention. You're like trying to figure too much of this stuff manually, but often it indeed is like a result of one of these challenges mentioned here. And I would say that like communication is probably one of the like most common reasons why things are like problematic. You have, like, even when maybe there's support from above, you have maybe QAs which are like working in isolation. Maybe you you don't have QAs working like in total isolation. Like that's the worst case scenario if your QAs are totally in a silo, but maybe your team is in a silo. So you have like multiple teams, but they are not cooperating. You have a team which is not effectively communicating with the stakeholders. So maybe there's even an intermediary between them, and they kind of lost track. They introduced all these checks. They introduced some quality gates, but are they even needed? And do you know what is going on actually in your production environment? Are you also monitoring your production? Maybe some of these quality gates are actually checking things which are not being used by your users or which are not that important to your users. So it's really like important to have this fully balanced approach where you're looking like things like on a full spectrum and really seeing where your problems are. So yeah, it really can be a great variety of variety of things, and usually it can be like usually it can be addressed by something. Like even the most drastic thing is to remove some quality gate. Like it's hard to delete stuff. It's hard to delete things because you invested so much stuff into it, so much time into it, and effort and knowledge. But if it's not bringing enough value, yeah, remove it. Sorry, change the technology, start all over.
Thanks. Another one, which actually was answered by our EPAM colleague Tomislav Prša, but I'll read it out anyway. So, any news on when the accessibility of web content will become regulatory requirement subjected to lawsuit, like it is in the US for many years, like it has been in the US for many years already? So basically, I think Tomislav found the answer, and the date is 28th of June 2025. But if you think you can add something on top, Boris, please.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned on that first bio slide, I did spend some time around accessibility testing, and actually, like you have different levels, like ARIA levels of compatibility to those standards, and while the top level, the third level, is very difficult to achieve, and it's I would say it's appropriate only for some types of applications where it's really targeted. Like getting to the first level, it's not that hard. Maybe it's worth like talking, even if you're a QA. Maybe it's worth talking to your stakeholders and like trying to, let's say, bring this point into discussion. Maybe they are not that aware about all these accessibility problems, and there are some easy wins, I would say. Like these tools, like I've used Wave, I've used X, and even Lighthouse, they might give you some like critical like things which are critical for accessibility, but that can be rather easily solved. So yeah, until it's really subject to some regular requirement on, let's say, broad scope, I still think it's worth investing into it.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions in the chat box. I do have one question from my side. Let me just bring it out. So, in terms of CI/CD, I know that this is more of a DevOps scope as well, but you probably work with, you mentioned GitLab, Jenkins, Argo CD, even GitHub Actions has become popular quite recently. Which one of those CI/CD tools would you recommend? Like, which one is how to say? There isn't a right answer here, but like which one is most popular or has been proven to work pretty well with a variety of environments?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a difficult question, and well, even at some point it may be pointless because like choosing the like CI/CD platform is usually on or whole organization level, so it is not something that usually you will have the option of choosing. But yeah, I worked with GitLab on my last project, working with GitHub on the current project, and yeah, I mean, it's like the differences are small. I mean, the concepts are very similar. Actually, I worked with Jenkins as well on the previous project, and like it's just matter of taste. I mean, maybe like some people will like GitLab because it has some interesting options. I know some people were concerned that it doesn't offer them some options they liked, but in general, yeah, I've like grown pretty accustomed to GitLab, so it's pretty good. But even now, like playing with these GitHub actions, it's pretty decent, and like all these modern tools are allowing you to achieve things in more or less similar way.
Okay, thanks. I see Renato is warning me that he left another question, so we are running out of time a little bit, but I will read out the question. If you detect any anomaly with performance testing for a potential release package, how do you handle the incident response for it since it disturbs the development cycle?
Okay, so I'm not sure that I got it. Can you repeat it? So if
Yeah, sure. I'm also trying to wrap up my head around it. If you detect an anomaly with performance testing for a potential release package, so I guess we've included the package, we are doing some kind of performance testing. How do you handle the incident response for it since it disturbs the development cycle?
okay. So I suppose that the target of this question is that we detected some problems with performance testing, but now, well, the developers will need to switch context to actually address these problems, and it might actually like throw the sprint like way out of desired state. So in essence, like I guess the idea here is to be agile. I mean, we like performance testing. I mean, that's the point. Like it should be run regularly. It should be run within your CI/CD pipeline. If it's being run like every month or every 2 months, like it might find some huge problems. But let's say in a setup where developers are opening some feature branches and maybe even deploying something to dev environment to test it or to some ad hoc environment, they might also run some basic performance tests. So if those performance tests are showing something, that will be practically as their definition of done. And yeah, addressing those problems shouldn't be that hard. But of course, again, if we're talking about this situation where performance testing are like found something huge, it depends. Like if the problems are like really affecting the users and are going to or could potentially cause really, really big problems for us, it deserves diverting of attention to this problem.
Makes sense. I hope Renato is satisfied with the answer. Anyways, I think that's pretty much it. If no one else has any other questions, let me just read what Renato writes. Basically, you need to have a basic performance test in the CI phase. Yeah. Okay, I think we can end the Q&A session here. It's already 15 past 3. So thank you all. Thank you, Boris, again for your presentation. Thank you. First, I'd like to thank actually the Pro Quality team and EPAM for again hosting this event. And a big thanks to everyone who joined this session. And I hope you've learned something and you'll be able to implement it in your day-to-day work as well. I also hope that I'll see you guys in our next QAfeteria, which will be a month from now. And till then, have a nice one.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Bye.
Cheers.